He's Andy Staples. He covers college sports for Sports Illustrated. He joins us now to give you what you need to know about this college football playoff. All right, give me the good and the bad and the ugly with all of this, Andy.
The good is it's a college football playoff. They're going to have a bracketed tournament, be it ever so small. And the better is it's eventually going to expand, and we know that.
All right, now what's the bad?
There isn't any. It's not the bowl system. It's not the BCS. They are moving toward a better system.
Okay, no, there has to be a negative. I've been on my soapbox for years now saying we need to do this, and then all of a sudden they decide to do this.
Oh, no, there's no negative. The people who were in charge were being really stupid, and they were pretty much giving in to some cronies that they had that ran the bowl system, and they finally figured out, hey, wait a second, we don't really need you guys anymore. We can do everything ourselves, so we're just going to do that.
When is the Final Four or Football Four or whatever they're going to call it? I noticed they didn't have a designation because you don't want to do that if you're going to go to 8 and 16.
Exactly. That thing is a complete blank slate. Dan Wetzel from Yahoo wrote a great column about it yesterday. So they're calling it college football playoff, which could not be any more boring. But here's the thing. Now it's open if you want to call it Chico's bail bonds college football playoff, if Chico's wants to pony up the dough. Now it's open in case you want to expand it to 8 in 8 years, which is probably what they're going to do, because ESPN is going to be begging them to expand after they see the ratings for the first one. So it's going to be a pretty wide open process. I think they're trying not to box themselves into anything.
All right, I'm looking at this now, and they're signed up to only have 4 teams, sort of protecting these people from themselves because you know how greedy they can be, and they're going to want to double this, and then all of a sudden the regular season is going to be rendered meaningless like college basketball. That's my big concern with this.
They're smart enough to know that the regular season makes a ton of money, so I think they're smart enough to know that you can't really go past 8 without affecting the value of your regular season. But you're going to find out with 4. I mean, look at this year. Alabama was head and shoulders above everybody else, but 2 through about 11 or 12 were fairly equal teams. All those teams could have competed with one another. So, it's not really that far-fetched to think you could have a really good competitive 8-team playoff. Now, you go into 16, you're getting teams that don't really belong there.
When are the games going to be played?
So they're going to do like a 2-day marathon, and they'll have them on January 31st and January 1st. And it just depends on the year how that works out and what bowls they're in, because the SEC and Big 12 have locked in January 1st for the Sugar Bowl at night, and the Big 10 and Pac-12 have locked in January 1st for the Rose Bowl in the afternoon. So it just depends on what bowls the semifinals are going to be in that year, and then the next week you've got the national title game at the Roving site, which the first one's going to be in Dallas.
He's Andy Staples, Sports Illustrated, joining us. Dan Patrick Show. As far as rotating these title games, how did Jerry Jones get the first championship game?
Jerry Jones offered them a lot of money. That's the way you do it. And they finally figured out that they can make a lot more money off this, and they're using all the avenues they can to do it. And, I mean, this is the type of thing that was tailor-made for an event like for a place like Jerry World. So you knew those guys were going to come strong with a bid. And I think it's probably going to wind up being a lot like the Super Bowl. It's going to go to the same kind of places. Jerry World, Atlanta's building a new stadium. When they get that thing done, that's going to be a popular one. The Superdome in New Orleans, because everybody loves partying in New Orleans. So it's going to have a very Super Bowl-esque feel to it.
One final question. How are we going to decide who's the committee that will give us the top teams? Is it weekly? Is it twice monthly? How do we find out where teams stand with the rankings?
Yeah, I hope they don't do that at all. They say they're going to semi-regularly update us on what they think are the best teams. I wish they wouldn't do that. I wish they'd just stay quiet, do it just like the NCAA Basketball Selection Committee. Don't say a word. Go in, make your decision, then come out and explain it, because if you have that rolling all along, it's not really going to help anything, and people are just going to be mad at you from 2 months out instead of just being mad at you that day.
Yeah, I don't like that. I think are they going to have a separate ranking where they say these are the 4 teams that would qualify for the Final Four, or is it just these are the top 4 teams? Notre Dame wouldn't have been in my Final Four last year.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. We did a thing, and if you go back on the archives at SI.com, Stuart Mandel and Pete Thamel put together a mock committee with using real using real athletic directors. We tried to get some commissioner types, and they wouldn't do it. But the discussions were just really fascinating. Like last year, for example, Texas A&M and Stanford, there was a huge push to maybe put them into the 4 because they were playing the best at the end of the season. And really, I mean, if you put Texas A&M at the end of the season against anybody, they're the one team that did beat Alabama. So how can you say they're not deserving? So it's going to be interesting.
I wanted to ask you this before we go. I brought this up to McLovin. If Johnny Manziel was in this draft, who would be the highest-ranked quarterback going into tonight's draft?
Geno Smith. Because they don't, in the NFL, they don't understand how to use somebody like Johnny Manziel yet, and they have very legitimate concerns about his size and durability if he's running around and getting whacked by some of these monster defensive players in the NFL. So I think they would still go for a more traditional pick, but I'm curious to see as things go if that changes, because that Colin Kaepernick thing, I know people in the NFL say it's a fad. It's not a fad because the game changes from grassroots up now, and high schools are all running spread offenses. That's what the quarterbacks coming into the league in the next 10 years are going to know. So that's what they're going to have to run.
Andy, good to visit with you. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
Andy Staples, Sports Illustrated.